Welcome to Philosophy of Play, where Nintendo is for us what Shakespeare is to your English teacher. Nothing compares to the feeling of when you're going to the cinema to watch the movie adaptation of your favorite video game. Going full cosplay for the Super Mario Bros. Movie, or even dressed as a hedgehog for a Sonic session. It's great for gamers at heart, and less great for moms just needing to keep their 8-year-old kid busy. Ladies and gentlemen, switch to your best controller and grab some popcorn. Lights, camera, action.
Let's start with animated movies, because honestly this is where video game adaptations have had the most success and the most interesting choices. The obvious place to start is the Super Mario Bros. Movie. When this came out in 2023, I think a lot of people, myself included, were kind of expecting it to be mid. And look, the plot is not that crazy. Mario falls into the Mushroom Kingdom, has to save Luigi and stop Bowser. That's pretty much it. But here's the thing. The movie was absolutely packed with Easter eggs and references that fans of the games genuinely appreciated, and audiences showed up hard. It made over $1.36 billion worldwide, becoming not just the highest grossing video game movie ever, but the first video game film to ever cross $1 billion. It opened to $146 million domestically in its first weekend alone. And that's... So yeah, on paper, you'd look at that and go, animated video game movies? Always a W. Yeah, not so fast. Because I just watched a Super Mario Galaxy movie, and okay, I want to be fair, some of it was genuinely impressive. The animation was smooth, and there were scenes that were honestly breathtaking to look at. I'll give it that. But then the plot kicks in, and it just lost me. It's confusing, it's messy. For a movie called Galaxy, it barely pulls anything from the Super Mario Galaxy games that actually gave us. What we got instead is just a parade of random references crammed together and a ton of new characters being introduced, all shoved into this movie. And that's where my real problem is. A Galaxy adaptation of all things is what they chose as the vehicle to introduce all these new faces. It feels less like a story they wanted to tell and more like a promotional reel for upcoming Nintendo projects. Like Nintendo looked at their release calendar and went, okay, so how do we get people hyped for these characters? And the answer was apparently, stick them all in the Galaxy movie and hope nobody notices. Yeah, right, that didn't work at all. Now, colorful levels, cartoony characters, family-friendly fun, that's the animated side of things. But video games aren't always about that, are they? Some of the most iconic games ever made are perfectly designed to make you absolutely traumatized. So what happens when Hollywood tries to bring these monsters to life? We're talking horror. And trust me, this is where things get dark. Hope you're not faint of heart.
Horror games have always been a huge part of gaming culture. They're more popular in this era than in others, but some of them had such a big impact on the industry that it felt like a crime not to take it to the big screen. One of those games was The Last of Us, from Naughty Dog. Iconic characters like Joel Miller or Ellie Williams were showcased in the absolutely amazing series, where they try to survive in fictional 2023 USA, after the Cordyceps parasite turns most of the population into hungry zombies. The great part about it was that the series showed just as much emotional storytelling as the games. And it isn't just the games that cleaned up the awards. 11 years after the first part was released, the HBO adaptation earned 8 2024 Emmy Awards from 24 nominations. While Pedro Pascal, who portrayed Joel, and Bella Ramsey, who portrayed Ellie, earned nominations, they sadly did not win. I think they deserve the award. What do you guys think? But Nick Offerman and Storm Reed did pick up Outstanding Guest Actor and Actress awards for portraying Bill and Riley. The Last of Us is definitely up there. Another remarkable adaptation was Resident Evil, a pioneer in the survival horror genre. The thing is, Hollywood knew that no actor could replace the cold charm of characters such as my boy Leon S. Kennedy or Chris Redfield. So they reinvented the source material. They made a new storyline in the same universe. That is smart if you ask me. The production was great, the music choice fit the vibe, and most importantly, none of the creative liberties were different from the games. An amazing adaptation. Some honorable mentions that are up there with the big boys are Silent Hill, a game that revolutionized psychological horror. It reintroduced iconic horror movies like Pyramid Head, The Executioner of Shame himself, while keeping the core story. And you can't forget Scott Cawthon's Five Nights at Freddy's, the first indie horror game to be adapted into a movie series. Even though they took creative liberties, it was still decent, but people didn't like it as much. Though the surprise on the fans' faces when they saw gaming legends in the FNAF games. Oh my god, it's MacPad! Corey! Sorry, got a little too excited there. Anyway, there were some adaptations that mixed animation with live action. They covered iconic franchises and brought happiness as well as a lot of disappointment. Back to you, Othman.
Alright, so we've covered animated, we've touched on the horror, but now let's talk about the game genre that I think has had the most surprising comeback story in recent years. Semi-live action game movies. And to talk about this properly, we have to start at the very beginning. We have to go back. Because before any of these movies even existed, video game adaptations had a reputation, and not a good one. For years, Hollywood kept swinging and missing. Bad scripts, bad casting, zero respect for the source material. And Sonic the Hedgehog as a franchise was no different. By the mid-2010s, Sonic wasn't exactly in his prime. The games weren't landing the way they used to, the fan base was frustrated, and the brand had taken hit after hit. So when a Sonic movie was announced, people were cautious, to say the least. And then, oh no, the first trailer dropped and we all saw it. The human teeth, the weird body proportions. You know, that Sonic. The internet collectively lost its mind, and honestly, rightfully so. It was bad. But here's where the story gets interesting. The studio actually listened. They delayed the movie, redesigned Sonic from scratch, and released him looking the way fans actually wanted, which in Hollywood is basically unheard of. When Sonic the Hedgehog finally hit theaters in 2020, it pulled in $320 million worldwide. Not bad for that movie. That almost became a meme before it even came out. Now I'll be real with you. Sonic 1 is not a cinematic masterpiece. It's a pretty generic road movie, and lately I have seen a lot of people clowning on it for being too basic, too bland, but I actually think that criticism is a little unfair. You have to understand the context. Sega needed to rebuild trust. This wasn't the time to go crazy with a complex story. They needed to show fans that Sonic could work on the screen. Full stop. Mission accomplished. And from there, the franchise just kept on growing. The entire Sonic film franchise has now crossed over $1 billion in the worldwide box office. Across 3 films, Sonic 3 alone pulled in $425 million globally, and it was an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, the best reviewed video game film adaptation of all time. So when we went from please fix those teeth to a critically acclaimed $1 billion franchise, that's genuinely impressive, and it's not stopping there. A 4th film is already confirmed and set to release in 2027. Now, if Sonic's journey was a glow-up story, the Minecraft movie was something else entirely. It was an event. You know when a movie stops being just a movie because of a cultural moment? Yeah, that's what happened here. People were showing up to the screenings in costumes, losing their minds in theaters, throwing popcorn everywhere. And look, I think we all know exactly which scene caused it. I'm not even going to explain it. The Minecraft movie grossed $961 million worldwide, making it the 2nd highest grossing video game movie of all time, right behind the Super Mario Bros. Movie. And the thing is, critics weren't exactly raving about it. It sits at about a 47% on Rotten Tomatoes, but audiences showed up, and the sequel is already scheduled for next year. So let's zoom out for a second, because what you're seeing here is a genuine shift. Live-action video game movies went from being almost a guaranteed disappointment to being some of the most commercially successful films in Hollywood. Sonic rebuilt itself from the ground up and became a $1 billion franchise. Minecraft walked into theaters with mediocre reviews and nearly hit $1 billion worldwide. Video game movies have come a long way, and I mean a really long way. We went from an era where a video game adaptation was basically a warning sign, something you'd see on a movie poster and immediately lower your expectations, to now where some of the biggest box office events of the year have video game logos attached to them. But here's the thing I keep on coming back to. The movies that work aren't necessarily the ones with the best plots, or the best reviews, or the most faithful adaptations. The Mario Bros. Movie had a simple story. The Minecraft movie got ripped apart by critics. Sonic 1 is arguably a pretty average film, and yet All of them made enormous amounts of money and connected with audiences in a real way, because what people actually want when they sit down for a video game movie isn't a masterpiece. They want to see the world they grew up with on a massive screen and just enjoy it. The failures, on the other hand, tend to come from the same place. Studios getting too ambitious, losing the plot, trying to use the IP as a vehicle for something else entirely, whether that's setting up sequels, promoting other products, or just chasing trends. The Super Mario Galaxy movie is a perfect example of that. Great visuals, but somewhere along the way, it forgot what exactly it was supposed to be. And that's the kind of lesson here. The best video game adaptations, animated or live action, big budget or small, are the ones that remember why people loved the source material in the first place. The ones that treat the games not just as a brand to slap on a poster, but as an actual foundation to build something on. We're clearly not done. More Sonic movies are coming, a Minecraft sequel along the way. Nintendo has made it clear they want more films. And given how much money is on the table, Hollywood isn't slowing down anytime soon. The question is whether they'll keep learning from what works, or keep repeating the same mistakes. Anyway, that's gonna do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments which video game movie you think is genuinely underrated, or which adaptation you're still waiting to see done right. I'll catch you in the next one. This was the second episode of the Philosophy of Play series on my channel. Click here to watch the previous episode and subscribe so you don't miss out on episode 3. See ya.